Hi, welcome back to Shots Recap. Today, I will tell you about the movie, Big Brother, released in the year 2018. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. In the beginning of the movie, we see a soldier named Henry Chen who just has finished his service in the US Army. Now he has returned to his hometown in Hong Kong. He decides to do some teaching job and visits a secondary school in his town, Tak Chi Secondary. He hands his resume to the principal. The principal notices that he doesn't have much experience in teaching. But then Henry shows him a recommendation letter from some government officials. The principal reads the letter and appoints him as a secondary teacher. Before he leaves, the principal tells him that the class he is going to teach is the most undisciplined class of the school and he has to be strict in his job. In the morning, Henry enters the classroom and encounters with a big chaos. He finds the students are not serious about their study and busy in singing and playing games in their phones. Some of them are sleeping and some are cooking noodles in the class. They brings their own portable stove in the school and completely ignore the new teacher. He tries to get their attention but they don't hear him. Now he decides to handle them with his own style. He comes to the students who are cooking ramen. He asks them not to eat too much ramen because it has too much sodium, but they don't take his advice serious. Then he approaches a student named Zufa who is playing ukulele in the class. He helps him to tune the instrument. He also warns the gamer about the radiation of the phone, but he doesn't move his head to see the new teacher. Henry introduces him to the class by writing his name and phone number on the board. The whole class laughs at his handwriting. When he is writing on the board, one of the students calls him and asks to leave. But he laughs it off and denies to leave the class. The students ignore him once again and continue with their stuff. Now he gets enough of it and takes a rubber band and a chalk. He hits the fire sprinkler of the class. All students try to hide themselves from getting wet. Now everyone look up to the new teacher. Finally Henry gets their attention and welcomes them to his class. When the class is over, some idle and undisciplined students gathers in the sports room and start smoking. Jack is the leader of this group and has a crush on a girl from another class. Some of them find him looking at her image and start making fun of him. Suddenly the rich and arrogant students from basketball team enter the sports room. They mock at Jack's poverty and bully him. Then they start playing basketball and the group watches them from nearby. Jack drops his empty bottle to the ground which causes the player to fall. The group makes fun of his falling. Later they are given detention by their English teacher named Miss Liang. The group plays a prank on the teacher to avoid the detention and run away from there. On the other side, the principal calls an urgent meeting and declares that the board is going to deduct the 20% in their annual funding. After the meeting, the board agents decide to take a tour of the school. They start inspecting to know where the funds are going to be used. Meanwhile, some bad students have planned to prank Henry. They have set up a water bucket to wet him. When Henry enters the class, he senses the bucket and throws it at the students. The students are shocked and failed in their prank. Then he asks Jack to hand over him his cigarette packet. Jack gives him all his cigarettes. Everyone is curious to know what Henry will do next. He asks the class to tell him about the ingredients which are used in making those cigarettes. Zufa answers correctly and Henry lets him to skip the class for a day. Now the other students start shouting to let them free too. Henry asks them to keep quiet and gives them all a cigarette. He asks them to inspect the cigarette carefully. The teacher knows if he simply tells them about the bad effects of smoking they will not listen to him. So he decides to teach them in his unique style. He asks the students about the results of smoking and explain how it affects our body. Everyone listens him carefully and seems to be interested in his explanation. Suddenly the bell rings and Henry asks the students to return him all the cigarettes. Later in the school cafeteria, some students start fighting. They destroy the furniture and throw away all food. The principal informs Henry that his 5 students have been suspended for destroying the cafeteria. When Henry enters the cafeteria, he finds Jack fighting with other students. He tries to stop them from fighting. When he is trying to calm down the situation, Jack abuses him to be unfair. He says the rich kids will never get punished. In the evening, Henry explores the files of his 5 students to know more about them. He finds, Zufa is an immigrant son from Pakistan and always bullied for his race. His neighbors also accused him of stealing in the neighborhood. He finds Zufa wants to be a singer. The second student is a girl named Denon. Her father always treated her as a disappointment for being girl because her father wanted to have a boy instead of her. Denon tried to be a boy to get her father's love and respect. She cut her hair and started playing with cars so that her father will treat her as a boy. But the father doesn't care for her and loves his son more than his daughter. Third and fourth students are 2 brothers, Bruce and Chris. Their mother left them when they were just child and their father started drinking alcohol. Now they were only had each other to take care of themselves. Bruce, addicted to video games, ran away from the reality while his brother decided to make some money to survive their life. Then Henry comes across Jack's files but doesn't find any information about his family background. Later we find Zach working as a waiter in a hotel. A popular MMA bettor named Jianying arrives at the hotel. While serving them, Zach tries to steal his expensive lighter but is caught by him. His men start beating him. Jianying gets Jack's ID card and finds that he is a high school student. He takes pity on him and lets him. He gives him some tip and asks to be his local food delivery boy. Meanwhile, Henry goes to Zufa's house and finds Zufa's father and some people are running after him to beat him for stealing a ticket. Henry tries to stop them from beating Zufa. But when he finds Zufa's mistake, he takes his father's side and lets them to beat him. Later, Henry motivates him to follow his passion. He also sings for him with a band at the streets. Zufa also joins him and starts singing in front of people for the first time. Everyone cheers and appreciates him for his singing. On the other side, Chris and Bruce's father arrives home late and asks them to get him some beer. When they refuses, he gets angry and asks them to leave his house. Later the teacher meets with the father and asks him to visit a rehab center to quit his drinking habit. Meanwhile, Denon's father gives her some makeup products and asks her to act like a girl. He angrily asks her to stop being a boy and change his wearing. When the parents leave the room, Denon applies her makeup on her little brother and drives away after stealing the car's key. While leaving her home, the teacher stops his car. He warns her that she is driving without license, which is illegal and it will take her to jail. To feel her better, he takes her to go-kart racing track. He also invites her father to racing. The race is started between father and daughter and they show no mercy to each other. While racing they come outside the track and a vehicle hits Denon's car. Somehow Denon saves herself from hitting. But her father doesn't know that she is still alive and starts crying over her daughter's death. When Denon sees her father crying for his daughter, she realizes her father loves her. She runs to hug him and feels happy. Now their relations have set up. The next morning, Chris and Bruce along with some students are sent to a rehab center by their teacher for a class project. They are asked to interview the alcoholic patients. They are totally surprised when they encounter with their father as their first candidate to be interviewed. The students asks him why he started drinking. The father answers, his wife left him alone with his son and to forget his wife, he started drinking alcohol. He doesn't tell the other students that Chris and Bruce are his real sons. He confronts his mistake in front of everyone and apologizes to his sons. At the end of the interview, the brother starts crying. Then we see Jack working for Jianying at MMA Fight Club. Jianying asks Jack to drug a fighter before the match. He offers him some money for giving drug to opponent. Jack is not ready but he forces him to accept the offer. While putting drugs into fighter's drink, Jack is caught. The fighters beats him and locked him inside a locker. After some minutes, Henry comes to know about Jack's situation and visit the fight club to save him. He asks the fighters, have they seen his student? They tells him that his student is not here and he can leave the place. Suddenly Jack cries for help from inside the locker. Henry finds that they have trapped his student. He attacks them and beats every fighter in the room. After saving Jack's life, Henry visits a hospital to get some treatment. Jax informs the police about the whole matter. Later a news shows up on the televisions about the incident. The media famous Henry for saving his student life. All his students watch the news and are totally shocked. Now Henry becomes a popular teacher in his school. His class starts respecting him. When he enters the class, all students welcome him by standing. Then we are shown a flashback which introduces Henry's past. It shows us that Henry was a prankster in his school days. He threw water balloon at a student playing piano at the annual function. He fought with that piano student and broke his hand. Later Henry was suspended from the school. Then his parents sent him to the United States for his studies. Now all the students start paying attention to his teaching. They start working hard for their exams. In the following scene, we see Bruce who now has addicted to pills. He starts taking drugs to avoid his problems. Being unfocused, he doesn't perform good in the exams. The teacher promises to help him but he is mentally disturbed. He finds hard to live his life and decides to suicide. He takes the drugs and jumps off his balcony. His brother takes him to the hospital. The doctors declare that Bruce has gone into a coma. Now the media starts blaming the school teacher for the suicide attempt. Later the education board interviews the teacher and decide to ban his teaching license. When he is about to leave the school, The students stop and ask him to stay. When he is gone, they all are heartbroken by his leaving and start crying. Later they all decide to work hard to pass the college entrance exam to make Henry proud. From that day, they study very hard to prove the board members that Henry is a very good teacher. On the day of the examination, Jack along with other students get a message from their teacher. In the text he asks them to meet him in their class before the exam. When they all gather in the class, they find that it was Jianying, who texted them. He stops every student from taking their exam. He wants to take revenge from Henry. Later, the teacher comes to the school and finds out Jianying's plan. He rushes to save his students. He beats Jianying's men and lets his students free. The students rushes to the examination hall. Meanwhile, Jianying attacks Henry. While beating each other, Jianying reveals to Henry that he is the student at whom he threw a water balloon at the annual function and broke his hand. He tells him since he broke his hand he was unable to participate in his big musical competition. He hasn't touched his piano since his hand is broken. He tells Henry that he ruined his whole life. Henry tries to talk with him but Jianying attacks him again. He tries to kill him with a knife but failed. Henry takes his knife but he decides not to kill him. He apologizes Jianying for his past deed and walks away. Meanwhile, the students reach the examination hall and take their exam at the right time. Then after few weeks, the result is declared and all Henry's students top the exam. On other side, we see Jianying playing his piano and decide to achieve his childhood dream. Meanwhile, Bruce has come out of the coma and promises his friends to attend the exam next year. The principal receives a letter from the board. It reveals that the board has decided to give his school 20% in the annual funds. The board also appreciate the students for their performance in the exam. At the end, Henry returns to his class after getting his teaching license back. He welcomes his class by hitting the fire sprinkler. Thanks for watching, and hit the subscribe button to watch more videos like this.